What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Votto, and I holding it down here in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for you guys today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live from Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network, wherever you get that. You can also hear the best of GoJo and Golic, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. Fun one today, athletic basketball writer Zach Harper going to join us later in the show. I need to figure out how the Magic all of a sudden got their way to fourth place. The only answer I have so far is Paolo Banchero and then a bunch of question marks. And so hopefully Zach Harper will be able to fill in all of the question marks there. We've got a lot to get to with the Buffalo Bills and the rest of what's going on in the NFL around free agency, the franchise tag deadline, all these changes and deadlines in the sport, Dad, that have seen teams have to make really hard decisions. And I think the Buffalo Bills are a fascinating window into modern team building because yesterday we saw they had to slash prices. Everything must go, especially if you are a member of the Buffalo Bills secondary. Yesterday, the Bills announced they released two-time Pro Bowl cornerback Tre'Davious White, all-pro safety Jordan Poyer, in addition to starting center Mitch Morse, amongst a host of other changes, Dad, that are going to try and get the Bills down back below the cap. They're about $40 million over the cap to start yesterday. These moves, once they factor in some of the post-June 1st things, they're in an effort to save them about $35 million. But there's no doubt, Dad, looking at what the Buffalo Bills have been for the last 4 to 5 years, a poster of consistency in the AFC. The team that stepped up and took the mantle from the Patriots in the AFC East, now having to make marquee changes. So, Dad, is this the closing of the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl window? What's on the line for this team right now?
Well, we'll get to the Buffalo Bills. Mike, I just, we've been doing this together for a while, and sometimes, you miss the mark to start a show. I mean, this is obviously talking about the Bills and what's going on here is important. But first off, you had one of the best things, on social media yesterday. I mean, your decision of Arby fries and Chick-fil-A fries, I think, took over social media than football took over social media. I wanted to give that a little bit of love first. You jumped right into football. I was very proud of you for going with the Arby's curly fries.
Well, listen.
Well, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I thought Chick-fil-A fries were just far and away number one. So I think your dad's right. That's a short conversation we need to have before we get to football.
There's a lot of controversy surrounding this, so I don't want to give too much away yet. But March Madness is on the horizon. There's a lot of things coming up that we're planning here around the show that may have to do with fast food conversation. It sparked a debate yesterday in our post-show meeting about who has the best fast food fries. And I'm going to be honest, Chick-fil-A wasn't getting mentioned near the top a whole lot at all. There were a lot of people, the Checkers and Rallies crowd came out in full force. Obviously, Five Guys was well represented. You people out there saying In-N-Out Burgers fries, find God, you know that's not true. I know people in my life that love In-N-Out Burger. I'm not one of them. I think it's fine. I think it's good for the price. But the fries, you can't you can't look yourself in the mirror and really say you believe those fries are worth consideration in this conversation. Like, Dad, I don't know if you got a clear number one, but my whole point was the waffle fries from Chick-fil-A, they're fine. The curly fries from Arby's, they're an institution. They are an industry-leading bit of spud work, and I think they deserve their moment in the sun, and they got it yesterday.
See, growing up, I was a big McDonald's guy around my swimming days, and I thought the McDonald's fries were always the best because I thought they salted them just right. But
yes.
they have definitely taken a turn to me, and I'm with you. The Arby's fries don't get brought up enough. I don't think enough people understand how good those curly fries are. So I'm with you because I do like the Chick-fil-A waffle fries a lot. So I just wanted to give you kudos for going with the Arby's fries because I don't think they get enough love.
I do think the McDonald's fry still probably, like, it's the Michael Jordan in the GOAT debate. It's the one that until further notice, someone's got to come and take the crown from it there. And I think we'll see that reflected as we continue this conversation going forward. But I'm very passionate about the way people shape potatoes. Like, the other thing that came up in all this, the most overrated cut of fry, crinkle cut fries.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like curly fries and straight fries from McDonald's are a different, this is a whole conversation, which I don't think we have time for in the A block, but this is a whole nother conversation. Curly fries hit different than straight fries, so I don't even think of them as the same.
They're all in, I forget if it's genus, phylum, class, order, whatever in that. I don't know what that would fall under for fries and spuds in the way that they're shaped here, but I do think they deserve to be considered together. But if we wanted to have a straight fry category, my sister in Christ, we got stuff that we can get to on that right now. So at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, stay tuned because we are going to have a lot more on this front that you're going to be able to argue online about very, very soon as we approach March Madness around here on the show. So, Dad, now that you've digested all of this pun fully intended, baby, are you ready to tell me how the Buffalo Bills are supposed to bridge this next gap?
Well, listen, this is what happens. You know, the Bills come a-calling, and not to be the absolute pun for the Buffalo Bills. The Bills did come a-calling. It's a pun morning. And you know you're falling into this, right? I mean, you know the situation that you're going to be in, even though the cap is a record this year at $255 million. And again, for the information, by next Wednesday, that's the first day of the new NFL year. So that's when all the teams have to be under that cap. This happens every year, right? It's just a matter of how much it happens, of where your contracts are stacked and what you have looking forward. Maybe, you know, because injury has to do it. You look at a Tre'Davious White, you know, for the Bills. This guy has been a fantastic player, but he's got an ACL in 21 in November, and Achilles 4 games in 23, and basically you're paying him $20-some million. So, you know, that math just isn't going to add up. Same thing when we get to Seattle about Jamal Adams. But, you know, one team at a time here in Buffalo, they're going through a lot. Now, they may sign some of these players back. We'll wait and see at a lower amount. What goes on now with GMs and management and players is, will you take a pay cut, even if you're asked that? B, you just flat out get cut. Or C, they'll restructure your deal where you don't lose any money, but you're actually helping the team by taking a check for a lot of money and knocking the cap number down. But this is the most of the time where you see guys getting cut who have bigger cap numbers or restructured, but for the most part cut. And you're seeing good players, right? Players somewhere else, just not at the money they're making. Now, they're a little older. Mitch Morris, the center, is 31. Poyer, DB, is 32. So, but they'll be playing somewhere, but at some point, and teams see it coming. They know a year or two away, unless this person is playing at an unbelievable level, that they're probably going to be a salary cap. So I don't think a lot of this is a big surprise.
No, it's not a big surprise, but this is also the result of the big swings that I think we're seeing more often, right? Where teams that are close and knocking on the door, and again, the Buffalo Bills, you go back to 2019, double-digit wins every year. The last 4 seasons, they've averaged, much like the Dallas Cowboys that got talked about a lot in the last couple of days in the talk show cycle. You look at a team that's averaged 12 wins a season for the last 4 years, oscillating between 11 and 13, Dad, that's gone on to at least the divisional round of the playoffs in the last 3 years. years. Now, they've also lost there, and so I know the Cowboys conversation was, do they have a winning culture? Which, yes, obviously, you're winning 12 games a year. You know how to win, as do the Buffalo Bills, but, Dad, the Bills have had that unique Patrick Mahomes problem, and to some extent, also a Joe Burrow problem and a Bengals problem in the AFC, but now this team that went all in on their quarterback, like a lot of these teams have to do, they're being asked to finally make that shift, Dad, that we've already seen the Bengals make in recent years. The shift that we've already seen the Kansas City Chiefs make in recent years, where once you've got the quarterback locked in, and I think we're all pretty comfortable saying at this point, Josh Allen, one of the game changers, one of the weapons. He's one of the titans that you've got at quarterback in this league. He's worth having around at that number, and on his own can lift you in places that most other quarterbacks can't. But now it forces you to move a little bit different. And for a Bills team that's got 10 draft picks coming up in the upcoming draft, there's a huge amount of pressure on them being able to rebuild. Because we sat here before this last season, Dad, and said, Buffalo Bills secondary getting older and a bit more oft injured. The spine of a defense that used to be the strength of that unit is now starting to crack and decay. And so while you've got certain pieces like Ed Oliver and some others to still build around there, you've got to do a lot of your reworking, because you swung big on contracts like Von Miller when you thought you were trying to kick down the Super Bowl door, and once you had the misstep on that, now you got to come and pay the cost.
And we'll see how much it costs him, Mike, because let's look at it. They did restructure Von Miller, so he's still going to be there. He signed that big deal. They restructured it. One of the ways I said teams obviously do it. Tre'Davious White is the best player that was cut, but he's also been a guy who hasn't been on the field. Remember, this defense was a top 10 defense overall. I think close to a top 5 defense against the pass and about middle of pack against the run. So they got rid of Poyer, they got rid of Neal, another defensive back. But on the defensive side, nobody, and White, of course, but White wasn't part of that, what they did this year, though you'd love to have him healthy on the team. I get it. So I'm not sure, Mike, if the rebuilding is as much, it looks like a lot of number of players, but let's look at the players, the really core players that are contributing to this team. I don't know if it's as much to rebuild as we think, but they are fighting Father Time on this because I should say they're fighting Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. On can you build a team in Josh Allen's time to compete and beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Patrick Mahomes' time?
Well, I think you're losing multiple leaders, like guys that were also mainstays in your locker room culture that you'd built around there. You've still got questions on offense around number 2 receiver, if Gabe Davis isn't going to be the one there.
That's
opposite
true.
Stephon Diggs. Like, you've got a bunch of questions that you've got to answer all over the place. And to your point, I'm not saying that the rebuild could be difficult, but you've got to hit on some draft picks now. You're going to have to find some free agents at more of a bargain price that can play a little bit outside themselves or more just within the structure of what you've got there. But they haven't necessarily found heir apparents at a lot of these places. And I think that's the concern. They're certainly not the only ones, Claudia, as we talk about the Seattle Seahawks, who have also been busy in recent days. I think another sign of a number of teams that are kind of in that retooling mode right now.
Yeah, Seahawks at the top of that conversation, like you mentioned. After cutting safeties Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and tight end Will Dissly on Tuesday, they followed that up on Wednesday by cutting defensive tackle Brian Monet. He missed all of last season recovering from knee injury. Keep that in mind. But all of these combined saved over $30 million in cap space over the last 26 hours. So yes, they have been busy. Now, of course, the next question is, where are they going to put all that money? Where are they going to fill those spaces? So GoJo, any names that come to mind for you for Seattle?
Well, so for Seattle, it's interesting because I'm not as worried about them doing it in the here and now. Like, I think they can afford, Dad, to be a little bit more judicious in the way they go about this, because you're bringing Mike McDonald over. There's all the new right now. You are starting a new regime here. You're doing it with a quarterback in Geno Smith that you're pretty committed to, but not super tied in long-term to. And so you've got a lot of options of how you want to build your future. It's a choose-your-own-adventure game right now. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on them in the team building when it comes to this, Dad, but they've given themselves options. They're being proactive, where I think a team like the Buffalo Bills kind of had to react to, hey, the Von Miller thing hasn't worked out the way you hoped it would. That cost a little bit more, so we got to make moves. Some of these guys got old and hurt at the wrong time, and so, Dad, I don't know who you look out and see is kind of under the most pressure now in the offseason. Teams like the Buffalo Bills or maybe the Detroit Lions, because they're coming towards the most mature version of this current roster, or who else might be in that same vein, because I don't think it's the Seattle Seahawks.
No, I agree. I don't think it's Seattle either. Coming in with a new coach on where they're going to be. Is Geno Smith going to be the quarterback for the next handful of years, or is that something that's kind of a wait and see? I agree with you. I think Buffalo is definitely under more pressure because we keep putting them there. They keep making moves to compete, not only in that division, which they had taken over from New England, but obviously with the Kansas City Chiefs, the cream of the crop in the AFC. So I think they're a little more kind of, guys, we need to figure this out. We need to figure this out while we got this quarterback, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all based around, right? The quarterback that you have, what you can build around if you can win. For Seattle, it was another one of those where you took a chance on someone. You paid Jamal Adams a ton of money, right? A ton of money. And the first year in Seattle, he had 9.5 sacks. That's what that safety did. He was so good at it. Last 3 years, he's played 9 games, 1 games, 12 games, and 0 sacks in 3 years. So you end up missing on that, and that you wish it would work, but it doesn't. So you figure that's going to be a cap casualty. But I agree with you. They have a little more time. Now, no team ever feels like they have time. Every team feels like they need to make the moves and be competitive right now. But as far as the two teams we're talking about, I absolutely agree with you that more pressure is on Buffalo to figure this thing out to try and get to the head of the class, while Seattle is going through a bit of a change now.
Jamal Adams, Von Miller, even the Russell Wilson conversation we had the other day are kind of signs. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys, I think those are moves at the time. Now, the Jamal Adams might have been the most questionable one of the bunch, considering what the thought process was on him as a guy who's a little bit more limited as a box safety, even if he offered you some of the pass rush wiggle and ability that you could work into that scheme in Seattle. But for everyone else, the Russ move, as maligned as it's been now as one of the worst trades of all time, at the time, we said, all right, there was a very different opinion on Russ coming off his time in Seattle. There was this view that the Denver Broncos were a quarterback away. Von Miller was fresh off of helping the Los Angeles Rams win a Super Bowl as this guy that was this late season source of pass rush juice that helped them kick open the door. The thought was, hey, maybe you can get the same out of him in Buffalo. Like, if I'm a team or if I'm a fan of a team, I don't know, I would imagine you'd be excited to see your front office making these kinds of hyper-aggressive moves when you think you're within range. It's sort of the conversation we've had the other day about why the trade deadline's picked up in the NFL, because I think you've got more teams willing to risk it, willing to burn the boats like the Rams and the Buccaneers did in favor of trying to win in the here and now, which, as a fan of a team, I'd imagine is what you want.
Mike, I'm with you. You look at the moves, I don't think they were bad moves. Start with Von Miller, what we saw him do with the Rams. So you said, okay, let's kind of bank on that, and he gets hurt. You look at Tre'Davious White, getting signed by the Bills a couple of years ago. I mean, he was a phenomenal player, right? And he, as I mentioned, ACL, then Achilles. Jamal Adams, while I agree with you, more limited, that the safeties are more versatile today, but when he signed, he was that safety. He was what the safeties were doing then. He was that box safety that could wreak havoc, and he did. He was doing it with the Jets, and he did it his first year with Seattle. And as I just mentioned, the games he played in the last 3 years, he got hurt. It's the biggest thing. We can all do all the prognostication that we want, but injury still seems, while bad play will do it, but injury can be the biggest factor in all of this. It's the sport where you get injured, I believe, the most. You sign guys to big deals, and you hope they live up to them, but the one thing you can never look at is he going to get hurt or not? Or if he does get hurt, how bad is it going to be? And there's 3 players right there that had major, major injuries after getting major, major dollars.
I'll still push back and say the Jamal Adams one was a bit of a risk, as was the Von Miller one, because he's an older player, and with the length of that contract, how much money they gave him, that was the concern going in, was you paid that much for an older player. And so this is what comes with the territory when you got guys being asked to play the violent positions into their mid-30s.
No, listen, I agree with you. You swing, and sometimes you swing and miss. And in these cases, they were swings and misses. Not like the Rams gave Von Miller a ton of money, but Buffalo did. I kind of scratched my head at that one. I'm not sure what the market was for Von at that point to give him that money. To give him that much money, you would think others were coming after him as well to be basically a pure pass rush guy. So you take swings, and when you miss. I mean, when you miss, you miss.
I think it's a lot easier to miss when you've got, again, the backstop of that quarterback. That's why when you look out into this offseason, a team like Seattle's got to be a little bit more proactive because I don't know if they're sure Geno's the guy long term. He's their best option now for sure. Right move to stick with Geno. If you want to bring a young guy in under him, that's cool, more power to you. But for everyone else looking out this offseason, like we're going to look at teams like the Cincinnati Bengals because they've got T. Higgins finally coming up. You might finally rock with some of those weapons from the Joe Burrow group that's helped him in his young career, even though you've already changed over on the defense. The Bills we've talked about. But man, we've talked already about the 49ers who are coming to the last year of that Brock Purdy rookie deal. Jared Goff's last year for his contract with the Detroit Lions. And really that Lions offensive line that's been the star of the show. All of a sudden getting ready to maybe lose parts with Jonah Jackson as a free agent. Penei Sewell's going to be due for a payday soon. Like, those are the teams I'm more worried about where you got very good quarterbacks, but you don't have one of the space aliens. And when you're coming up on paydays at the end of the deal, now all of a sudden the clock really starts ticking. And now all of a sudden, I think the pressure starts to mount in a year where you got a little bit more cap space now. And with that is going to go the expectation from the fan base to say, all right, found money. You found $20 in your jeans while you were doing laundry. What are you going to go out and buy with that right now? That question still unwritten right now. So we'll wait to see what happens on the NFL front. As again, the Buffalo Bills slashing prices to try and get down under the cap. Coming up next, though, let's get to the NBA last night. The Golden State Warriors slashed all the way through the supposedly improved Milwaukee Bucks defense. What's it mean? Next. How do you bounce back from a 52-point loss to the Celtics? Well, easy question. You just go beat up on the next best team in the East, and that's exactly what the Golden State Warriors did. Last night, they took down Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks with a 35-point win, and the defense stepped up, and one guy in particular, subbing in for one and only Draymond Green, Trayce Jackson-Davis, rookie big man, had 4 of Golden State's season-high 13 blocks, and he did it against Giannis. Who does that? Well, Draymond Green had to sing his praises after the game.
I told him thank you. He saved me because I was awful. in the third quarter. Missing layups, turning the ball over, and Steve got me out of there. Got Trace in, and he was blocking shots, he was rebounding, he was dunking the ball, good finishes, and he just brought the life back to us. They were starting to make that run, and when you're playing against a great team, they're always going to make a run. And you try to get yourself out of it, and I just couldn't get it going there in the third quarter. And Trace came in and saved me for sure, because I was awful, but saved the day for us. Built the lead back up. I think they cut it to 6. And he was able to make a lot of plays on both ends of the floor to get us back in a position to take control of this game again.
Well, we do love the accountability, guys, right? And we do love to see rookies stepping up. We've talked about the depth that this Warriors team has. But my question is, are we concerned at all about the inconsistency? And I know you don't want to look at too small of a sample size, but get blown out by the Celtics and then blow out the Bucks. Does that say more about the Bucks or maybe inconsistency with the Warriors, GoJo?
I think it speaks to what we've felt about Golden State for a while, is maybe not championship outfit this year, but scary matchup, especially coming from where they're likely going to come from in the bracket, because if you can step on this landmine potentially on any given night, you've always got to be ready. A team, Dad, that can hit you with this kind of barrage from 3 the way that they can, but also does have that depth and has so many different guys and types that they can throw at you. We always know once you get to basketball in the playoffs in the NBA, it's about, hey, game to game, series to series, how can you adjust and match up? And Golden State, because of some of the injuries to their key players, Draymond's talked about how much him being out from suspension gave way to Jonathan Kuminga helping take a big next step for them and how important he's been to that team. The Warriors have built up an interesting treasure trove of parts that they can use should they get their way out of the play-in and into a first-round series where all of a sudden you got 7 games to mix and match.
Yeah, that's the beauty of having somebody step up who maybe, in a different game. As we talk about this a lot, especially in the postseason, who outside of the stars step up, and in this game wasn't the postseason. But it is Trace Jackson-Davis who steps up with the 4 blocks, 3 against Giannis, 13 blocks as a team. He has 15 points, and he's averaging 7 points. So he steps up and helps bail, as Draymond said, helps bail Draymond Green out as well as the team a bit. But I still think, there's a reason they're in the 9 slot and the Lakers are in the 10 slot, is we watch them, I think, kind of with hope. Can they do it again? I don't know if it's as much as every time Tiger steps on the golf course, we hope, that Tiger can play well and we can see him on Sunday anywhere near the leaderboard. We have Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, LeBron James, right there is one of the greatest of all time, and what he is doing, you like to see those players there. At least I think a lot of people do. There are some that probably don't. But they're 9 and 10 for a reason, and I think Claudia mentioned it's the consistency. Could they consistently do damage in the playoffs when it's a series? And that's what I don't know. Now I know Minnesota sitting in the one slot and Oklahoma City in the 2 aren't used to going deep in the playoffs, so that could be an issue playing one of those top teams, the teams that are a LeBron-led team, a Steph Curry-led team, who are very experienced in the playoffs, would make it interesting matchups right out of the gate, that's for sure.
I think it all comes down to this late season push, right? Like, we have the top dogs. We talked about the Celtics, the Bucks in there, but a team like the Warriors that has the depth, the question that comes into it is the defense there. And Dallas comes to mind for me, and Luka. Everybody keeps talking about the issue that man is whatever it is, like 5 consecutive triple-double 32-point games. But it doesn't matter because they're not playing defense and they're not winning because it's all on his shoulders. We have a squad like the Warriors where 12 players last night put up points. Steph will drop 30, but he has the support behind him. And now you have young guys like this stepping up on defense. It sounds silly because we always say, defense wins championship and defense matters in the playoffs. But if we're talking about who's the actual contenders, I think that is going to be the point of difference.
Well, and I think it's important to consider. You're absolutely right. When you think of a team like Dallas who has to spend so much time hiding their best player on defense, and Luka, and Kyrie not necessarily a value add either there because he's small. It's a little bit more difficult to factor him into that. And then you look at what's going on here. I think this game last night is an interesting way to think about that, because what's the conversation been for Milwaukee for the last however many weeks since Doc Rivers took over is fix the defense, fix the defense. We came on the show yesterday and talked about how since Doc had taken over, since they had fired David Griffin, they had been the second best team or first team in defensive efficiency since that point in time. But last night, you saw the stat. Golden State Warriors, when it's a block party and you're getting out in transition, Golden State was able to kill them. Jonathan Kuminga and these guys running the floor is a nightmare. And so it was less on the Milwaukee Bucks defense, I think. I mean, listen, the Golden State Warriors shooting damn near 50% from three.
Yeah.
Not cute, but that's what happens sometime with that team. And that's why they're so dangerous, because you can get buried under the avalanche quick. But, Dad, it was, I think, a Milwaukee team that struggled a bit offensively. Giannis coming back into the lineup after missing a couple of games with that injury and having to sort of reinsert himself in there. It does throw off a little bit of the things in there. You've got to work so much more of that. And we saw that offense looked a little bit out of sorts for them. The defense for the Warriors turned that into points, and the rest was sort of the night. So Claudia is absolutely right in that we get to this time of year and teams that have a little bit more on the tool belt, and Golden State certainly does to an extent with some of the guys they've got there pedigree-wise, are absolutely built to make a difference.
Yeah, I listen, I agree with all of that, and I still wait for Milwaukee to get Chris Middleton back. I still want to see what that's like. He's been out since February 6th. We're at about 20 more games, I think, for the season. So I'm still waiting on kind of the full contingent if they're ever going to get there and get some kind of rhythm, you know, with Lillard, with Giannis, and with Middleton. So I want to see if and when that's going to happen before I really give kind of a full. It'd be interesting to talk a little basketball later that we're going to about that and what Chris Middleton can add once he gets in there and gets healthy. But I just love the races, you know, that are going on now. Everybody always looks at the top, and the race in the East is over, right? I mean, it's 8 games clear is Boston of Milwaukee, but obviously in the West it's not. But even for the automatics and then the play-in, you know, you sit there and look at the 4 spot of Orlando, which is still somewhat amazing. The 4 spot to the 8th spot, there's only 2 games that are separating. You look in the West, you look at the 5th spot to the 9th spot, and it's 3 or 3.5 games that are separated there. So as I said, about 20 games to go. I'm really interested to see who falls below what the Mendoza line is, this, you know, in basketball now is that 6th slot, right, where you're automatically in as opposed to having to play your way in. I think it's a nice battle toward that. But back to Milwaukee again, Mike, the jury's out on me until we get a little more Chris Middleton in to see how he fits in with that threesome.
Well, you mentioned the biggest elephant in the room is health with all of this, right? We have LeBron James exiting that game against Sacramento last night with the ankle injury that he's been dealing with. He says he's going to be fine, but LeBron is a 40-year-old man who's been playing a little bit dinged up for a while now, heading into this home stretch. Golden State was finally the full complement to themselves, and it looked good. Milwaukee's been dealing with some of that same stuff right now. The Dallas Mavericks, I don't know what you attribute that to right now. The fall from grace there might cost Jason Kidd his job sooner than later if this keeps up, because I don't know if we're in lose. It seems like we're in lose the locker room territory with that one, but I think down the stretch, that's going to be the biggest thing for all these bubble teams, as it usually is. And right now, the Sacramento Kings beating the Lakers in that group of teams down there in the bracket for the play-in tournament, a huge swing down the stretch of the season as Sacramento sets that tone. So I don't know, Dad. I'm with you. The races are compelling. It's very interesting right now because I think the 2 teams that we've talked about here, and we mentioned Zach Harper is going to join the show in about a half hour, looking at the Dallas Mavericks, looking at the Philadelphia 76ers, what the future holds for both of those teams that have been dropping like a stone right now. The Sixers currently situated in the play-in tournament, still no Joel Embiid, and that seems to have gone about as bad as we all expected it to go in the interim while they've been trying to figure out life without him. So very difficult stuff to try and figure out in NBA land. Coming up next, though, let's talk about a college team trying to make the transition. Some interesting words from Nick Saban that might reflect more on the future of college football next on GoJo and Golic.
as to why Alabama's former head coach Nick Saban retired. He's done with college football, and he says NIL and the transfer portal are two major reasons for that. After they had the overtime loss to Michigan in the Rose Bowl, he said they got back to Tuscaloosa, and it was an issue. The messages he was used to sending were not really hitting like they once did with the players. He said 70 to 80% of the players only wanted to know two things, guys. Are they going to play or should they transfer? And how much money are you gonna pay me? How do we feel about this? One of the all-time greats leaving college football because of NIL and the transfer portal.
In part, and I think Nick was pretty clear with his words on this for a reason, because he understands and has seen the conversation about this stuff and sees so many coaches and so many pundits trying to demonize this and make this the sole reason for college football's problems. And Nick Saban just said, this is a part of the reason. I've been thinking about and trending in this direction for a while. He said he had talked to their AD, Greg Byrne, about, hey, we're going to have to do this as more of a year-to-year conversation about my future in this sport, because the game is different now. And I think Nick Saban's saying, yeah, listen, and he said, I'm not saying it's wrong the way that players have responded to that. He's just saying that's not what they've been about there, and it's not why they've had success, Dad. He's accomplished enough and was old enough in his career where he could say, hey, you know what? The game is changing right now, and I don't feel compelled to stick around with this because I've already had my day in the sun. I've already had the most storied career in college football. So this, to me, is not surprising. This is, again, what we said day one, which is older coaches with options to either go somewhere else or just retire, we're probably going to be more inclined to do that because, yeah, change, no matter the form it takes, is difficult for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And there are other factors as well. Remember when a coach used to sit in a living room and say, I'm going to be there for your kid while he's there for his 4 or 5 years? Coaches can't really say that anymore. And B, players are the ones that aren't going to be there for 4 or 5 years. You know, it's the parents saying, are you going to take care of my son for the next 4 or 5 years? When quite honestly, it's the player that probably could very well be gone in a year or two, maybe a couple of times. For Nick Saban, listen, he knew he was way closer to the end than the beginning. And one of the other factors is assistant coaches. You know, your former teammate Tommy Rees, when he went there to be the RO coordinator, that was his 7th offensive coordinator in the last 11 years. After the 2018 season, they had 7 assistants go for other jobs. So it was actually, he said it was harder to get assistant coaches because it was the assistant coaches that he wanted to hire that were asking the question that the parents normally ask. Hey, Nick, how long are you going to be here? You know, I don't want to come here for a year or two, you be gone, and then I'm out looking for a job again, putting another for sale sign in the front of my house. So this was easier when Nick was going to be around for another decade, and you knew as an assistant coach, you could either be there with him or have a great chance to advance to a different job, maybe a head coaching job somewhere else. The thing about this is, Mike, and we know it, it's not going away. It's only how it's going to be managed going forward. And I wonder, and I don't know, I don't have the answer to this. I don't know if you have an inkling of it. You do get players now asking how much they're going to make. Do you think it's more damning? The top players, you know, listen, and let's also be honest. Top players were getting bags of money under the table by schools.
Sure.
You know, so they were maybe deciding where they wanted to go by the amount they were getting. It's the next group that wasn't getting paid, that, you know, under the table, but now it's legal. So everybody is looking for a payday, right? You know, there's your star starters, and then there's your other starters, and then there's your backups, but they're all looking for some kind of money. And I think that's part of it. I don't think it's the top players doing it, but the rest of the players that I think really has Nick kind of shaking his head saying, boy, has this changed?
I'd actually disagree with that. I'm still not sure what, to a man, everyone on a roster is making at this point. We still don't know a lot about this world.
So I'm just asking.
But what I would say is, I do think that it's probably more likely the top players asking, and that was what was most jarring to Nick, because when you think about Alabama, they haven't had to play this game the way that everybody else has in the early going, because they were Alabama. Like Nick said, we can point to all our guys in the NFL. We can point to all our rings. We give you the things that other programs can't. Other programs might be able to promise you money. Nick Saban can tell you, if you come here and go through our system, whether you are a coach looking to rehab your image or whether you're a player looking to make millions of dollars playing pro football, we have a system that gets you to those places and does it almost universally for guys at a certain level. And so I don't think for a long time they had to play the same game when it came to top players. Now that's different. Now it's becoming more ubiquitous. If this is happening to Nick Saban, I can assure you it's happening to coaches all over the place. If even Alabama and everything they have to offer in certainty and performance and execution can't get them away from the bag man, then all of a sudden this is definitely a problem, or not to say a problem, but this is the system now for college football. It has to be.
So I agree with you that he got all the players. So let me ask you this. In a way that it doesn't look good for college football because it's the West, as we say, with
all right, we got some technical difficulties with Dad going on right now, but I will say the Wild Wild West thing, I don't even say that this isn't a good look for college football necessarily, Claudia. Like, this is just the reality, and that's what Nick's saying here is it's a different world that you're having to operate in now, and every so often we go through this where the landscape of college football and the resources change so much. What players are looking for out of the equation changes so much. And I think now this is going to be incumbent on a younger generation of coaches right now. I'm not surprised you're getting Nick Saban deciding to hang it up right now. I'm not surprised you're getting a guy like Chip Kelly who's decided, hey, it didn't look like it was going very well at UCLA. Why don't I get back to coaching football? He talked a lot about that the other day. He didn't get to coach football the same way he did when you've got to be the head coach and the CEO of these college organizations. And so I'm not surprised older coaches with options are doing this, and I'm equally as unsurprised that younger coaches who are hungry and know this world a little bit more, it's the only world a lot of them have come up in, are ready to grab the mantle and say, we got next.
Well, before we get to Chip Kelly, too, it's the new era of football, right? Because we saw it with Bill Belichick, too. You could tell he was frustrated with the fact that players weren't reacting the same way they used to. Not like bully ball, but he used to be able to be sort of rough with the guys and straight up. And now, I don't want to call it a softer generation, but it is. It's sort of like, what can you do for me instead of what can I do for you? And we're seeing that now reflected in the college game. Recruiting's not going to be the same because of the NIL and transfer portal. So Nick Saban, I get it. I never coached a day in my life, but I understand the frustrations. Chip Kelly, you talked about, though. Senior, you want to touch on this first before we go to Chip?
Yeah, I wanted to say, so Mike, real quick, is this better now for college football because you don't have the dominant team, because Alabama got everybody? So while we know it's better for the players because they're getting money, overall, is this thing better for college football because it spreads the talent?
I don't know if we necessarily know enough to say it does spread the talent or not. And I don't think it's a better or worse for college football situation. I think it just is. It is the new world. Again, if this is happening at Alabama, then it's happening, I'd imagine, at the lion's share of the competitive top-end programs in the sport. And so if that's the case, it's going to be, hey, maybe a bit of a redistribution of power just because, first and foremost, Nick Saban retiring. I'm not saying it's solely because of this, so I'm not going to give the credit to NIL and the portal for retiring Nick Saban. He's just a guy who seemed older and ready to get done and get on with the rest of his life. That alone changes so much of the landscape of college sports. Having the dominant coach of my lifetime and of the last couple of decades step down automatically opens up the door for a little bit more in the sport. And maybe a new way of doing business, again, allows a young coach who is more open to saying, hey, these are the current circumstances. Let me figure out how we can best put ourselves in position to step forward to that next level. We talked to Kenny Dillingham on this show, who had an interesting perspective on all of this. Younger coaches like him, Dan Lanning at Oregon, Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, all these coaches in their mid to late 30s now in position to say, all right, I came up a little bit more in this way of doing business in college sports, might be a little bit more ready, and maybe at some different schools than we've seen recently to step up and grab whatever comes next because of that.
Yeah, no, listen, it makes sense. I think there are a lot of components involved in this, no doubt about it. There's not just one thing you can point to, like many people will point to NIL and or to the portal and say it's ruining college football. But I would agree overall, like you said, this is what it is and who is best to deal with this. And any coach that puts their team in position to deal with this and how do you deal with it going forward to get your players and hold on to your players is going to be the key thing.
Yeah, it's the same question. Recruiting in college sports is like evolution. It's you keep running faster and faster to stay in the same place right now. Before it was a facilities arm race and the promise of what you can get them to the NFL, and now it's just changed to good old-fashioned dollars and cents currency, and who adjusts best will be best sooner than the rest. All right.
tag window closed, free agency nearing. Adam Schefter tweeted that free agent tight end Jonnu Smith visited with the Dolphins on Wednesday, and the two are in contract negotiations. Another tight end talk here, Commanders signed free agent tight end Zach Ertz to a one-year deal, so he is returned now with Washington's OC, Cliff Kingsbury. And the Broncos gave Russell Wilson permission to talk to teams ahead of free agency after releasing him. How kind of them, GoJo, to let him do that.
Hey, you know what? It's obviously been a very ugly situation between both sides here for a while, going back to what happened at the end of the regular season. It was a bit out of pocket for everyone. And the difference is Russell Wilson was in a position where he goes, I'm not going to be quiet, so you'll look good. And the rest is history. But now that we know it's coming to an end, yeah, Dad, they seem to be giving him a little bit of a jump start on what's going to be his upcoming free agency period here, since we know we got the legal tampering window coming up and all these things in the lead-in. So he gets a little bit of a head jump on this to try and figure out who is going to be the next landing spot for a guy that is still a Hall of Fame quarterback overall in his resume, even though he hasn't played like it recently.
Yeah, listen, this is a fine thing to do. You know you're getting rid of him. He knows he's going to be gone. Let him start talking to people. I mean, he's going to have a job somewhere. But this was one of the uglier things. You know, this is one of the things that normally happens behind closed doors, right? As far as that the injury guarantee, that if a quarterback doesn't get hurt, all of a sudden maybe you don't play him. But this one, so you don't have to deal with that. But that usually happens behind the scenes. This became very public when, you know, Russ came out and said they came to me and said they wanted me to change that clause. You don't hear that an awful lot where it becomes public like that. So now it was kind of laid out there in front of everybody. He went to Denver. He struggled. They tried to mess with the contract that that team signed him to and actually had that clause in there. So he said, no, you put it in there. I signed it. I'm keeping it. And I don't blame him one bit for it. And basically, they said, okay, fine, take a seat on the bench. I mean, it was so publicly played out to an already bad situation of him not playing well the year before and the amount of money they gave him. Rarely do you see this where a guy is getting released before his extension even starts. I mean, it just was an absolute mess in Denver. So this seems like the nicest way to end it. Okay, we're going to release you. Go ahead and go talk to some teams before you're really allowed to.
I do wonder how different this all would have been if Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the hire for year one of this, right? Like, we talk about this all the time for young quarterbacks in this league, how, listen, you're so much at the mercy of the environment that you end up in when you're drafted. And, you know, look at Trevor Lawrence, year 1 to year 2 with Urban Meyer, and then Doug Peterson shows up down there. Obviously, it's not perfect right now. We have some questions still maybe about Trevor Lawrence on the high end, but it was night and day from a coach in Urban Meyer who just was not ready for what the NFL was asking of him to what happened when you had someone who was more the adult in the room. The same thing could be true. Like, again, Russ's raw stats from this last season weren't terrible. Took a lot of hits, but you go back and the reputational damage that happened during that Nathaniel Hackett season, where it wasn't just bad, it was a laughingstock. They were a red zone nightmare. It was all these things that in a day and age where we had been pushing chips in the table, and I was in that camp of saying at the end of the Russell Wilson tenure in Seattle, hey, if it's between him and Pete, you keep the quarterback. You keep the guy that's been a part of a multiple versions of winning around there from the Legion of Boom to after that. And I was dead wrong on that based on the structure they had clearly put in place around Russ that aged well when Pete took Geno Smith to comeback player of the year and the playoffs in that year right after that. So I was wrong about that on the front end, but I think we saw this last year. It wasn't as bad as it looked in 2022. And so I think as we do the retrospective on this now, I think a lot of the blame does need to be laid at the feet of the people who made the decision to hire Nathaniel Hackett over there, someone who proved to be a coach that can work well in the right context with Aaron Rodgers, who really likes him, but was not ready for that head coaching jump there. And what that one season did to the future trajectory of Russell Wilson's career, it's unimaginable.
Yeah, it is. And listen, this is why you kind of roll. When they always say when the new head coaching hires are made each year, and their first-time head coaches coming from coordinator positions, I always love when they say grade them. And I'm always like, before the season starts, I'm like, how the hell can you grade them? We have no idea. We have no idea Nathaniel Hackett looked good as an OC, but we have no idea what he'd be as a head coach, just like every other OC or DC that's hired as a head coach for the first time. And then you see how they play out. Look at Nathaniel Hackett, how it played out for him. Look at DeMeco Ryans in Houston, how it played out for him. He's a first-time head coach with a first-time quarterback and a first-time play caller, and it was completely different. Some guys pick it up, and some guys can make that transition, and others can't. The greatest D coordinator I played for in Bud Carson in Philadelphia, one of the great D coordinators of all time, was a head coach in Cleveland for a short time. Didn't last there, and even told me we were in Philly. He said, I was just meant to be a coordinator, not a head coach. It's just how it is. But to your point, Mike, the damage that it can be done, the damage that can be done in a year in the NFL can be incredible. You know, the move looked great for Seattle, getting rid of him at that time and coming back, you know, and letting him go to Denver, to where it all just fell apart. So that's why I'm going to be really interested where he goes, Russell Wilson, and how he can help a team going into his third year away from Seattle.
It was just amazing, the confluence of events, because it seemed like so many people, including a lot of Russ's former teammates, had been waiting for that moment to say, look, we told you. This guy wasn't being held accountable the same way we were. This guy was given more credit for the wins that we had than we were. And look at what you've got now. And I think that certainly didn't help the equation. Like, the tearing down of Russell Wilson as an idea is fascinating to me for those reasons, because it took all of that perfect storm of negative energy coming together. And now on the other side, it's a quarterback that we're talking about, someone plucking out of the bargain bin to be the bridge gap between where people want to go and where people want to be. And maybe that's equal parts, hey, we miscalculated a few things about the Denver Broncos roster and where they were at overall. We saw the defense last year unbuckle for the first half of the season before they kind of locked in down the home stretch. So it's not to put the sole blame on him, but Dad, you're also absolutely right about the coaching element of this, and I think that is a good reminder as we head into every year, especially these coaches where we haven't seen the discernible skill. You know, Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the play caller when he was with Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't that kind of situation, so you don't even have that to fall back on as your thing. And the bedrock of all this, DeMeco Ryans, we had heard him lauded for his leadership ability. People were coming out of the woodwork in the opposite direction to say, oh, no, when I played with this guy, he was X, or when I got coached by this guy, he was Y. We had some inklings, but you're right, it's still a crapshoot overall because you're the CEO now. It's what we mentioned before. Chip Kelly, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, was the head coach at UCLA, had been a head coach in the NFL, and said he looked up at some point during bowl prep this last year as they had their offensive coordinator leave for another job and he had to coach quarterback, saying, I realized I hadn't coached a position in 8 or 9 years. I hadn't been in the thick of it like that. And it's, you know, a commentary on a lot of things, but I do think when you reverse engineer that, it's, oh yeah, that's right. It's a completely different muscle that these guys have to flex once they get to the big chair, and not everybody's built to do that.
No, they absolutely are not. And with Russell Wilson, it'll be interesting, just Mike, just from his perspective, because I'm with you. All of a sudden, teammates who had raised eyebrows at Russell in the past, kind of with his actions and with his words, don't know how well liked he really was. Putting all that aside, he's now had 2 years in Denver where people say he has regressed and he is done. I got to imagine that he is, whoever wants him and takes him, that, remember, he can take a low offer because it's just offset money. If he gets $1.5 million from somebody, you know, that just means Denver's paying $37.5 million to him because he's getting $39 million no matter what. So I would imagine that Russell Wilson, and I wonder if you agree, is kind of in a, you know what, I'm going to show everybody mode. I'll go ahead and, you know, I'm not going to worry about taking any kind of money because I'm already getting the money. I'm going to go show people that I can still play. And I think that's his complete mentality right now, wherever that ends up being. And it's going to be somewhere. Someone can get this quarterback on the cheap right now. I think you'd be foolish if you're in need of a quarterback not to look at it.
You can buy the dip on Russ right now. The thing is that I don't know what his mentality is, because that's the other part of Russ, is he's a different guy when it comes to that. We've heard a bunch of his teammates, both past and present, say that, like, yeah, the way this guy operates, he doesn't seem like one of the guys hanging out with everybody else. And I don't know if the last couple of years have humbled him to the point where the approach is going to be different, or if it's still going to be Russell Wilson, the CEO of Russell Wilson Corp., who operates like he's getting ready to run for office this September.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic for hour 2 as we head into the home stretch of the NBA regular season. We are joined by the athletic Zach Harper to break down all of the madness that ensues. Zach, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No, we appreciate you stopping by, Zach. We got a lot of questions right now in the NBA, and so we need your help finding answers to this one. And I guess I'd start there. Claudia mentioned the world since the All-Star break here. In that time and in the games that we've seen since, who's jumped out at you most? Who's come out of the gates the hottest down this home stretch of the season?
Well, I would have said the Bucks before last night, and then they just got destroyed by the Warriors, and it wasn't even close. But the Bucks did look good before last night. You know, they were playing defense, which they hadn't done all season. They had the 4th best defense since Doc Rivers took over, just by simplifying things and playing defense the way that roster is set up to play defense. And so they have looked good. The opponents haven't been that great, but they've looked good. You know, the Lakers were starting to look good. They got beat last night. Like last night really ruined a lot of things that I was feeling with this league, because it felt like, all right, we've got some good stuff going now, and the only thing you can count on is that the Wizards are going to be horrible.
I was just going to ask what the only certainties you can count on at this point. So maybe besides the Wizards, is there anything else you feel certain about at this point in the NBA season?
Yeah, I mean, at least for the regular season, like, we know the Thunder are legitimate. The Thunder are so incredible, and everyone's going to say, yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's amazing, and he is. He's an MVP candidate. He might be the MVP, but it goes beyond that. Like, Jalen Williams is a star in this league. Chet Holmgren is a star in this league. Lou Dort is shooting lights out and playing incredible defense. They don't do it with any big men. They're going to, probably reevaluate this summer of whether or not they can get by as is, but they just spread the floor. They drive the ball like crazy. It's not just, we shoot a bunch of threes and hope they go in. They're so aggressive. They attack so much. The Denver Nuggets, like, they're going to be amazing no matter what. Like, that team is so comfortable in their skin and just like, their heartbeat never rises at all in any moment, unless, Jokic hears that his horses are in trouble. That's the only time he actually gets a heartbeat.
Ponies.
So, like, those teams in the West are as solid and as comfortable as it gets.
So one back to the East on Milwaukee. How different is this team if they can get Chris Middleton, who's been out since February 6th, back into the fold and kind of in a good playing shape going into the postseason?
Yeah, it's a great question, because, you think Giannis, you think Dame, and what's going on with Dame, and Brook Lopez is solid, and yeah, Doc Rivers is maybe more comfortable as a coach than what Adrian Griffin was, but people kind of forget about Chris Middleton. This is an extremely dynamic two-way player when he's healthy, a guy that helped them win a championship 3 years ago, and it changes a lot. The rotations are very thin right now. I mean, they don't have a lot of depth. So you add an all-star caliber wing who can play on both ends of the floor, can distribute, can shoot from outside, spot up shooter, attack off the dribble. Like, he will give them so much more that they need. The problem is with them is, how much do you balance that out? It was easy to balance it out when Drew Holiday didn't really need the ball and he could just go defend. Dame needs the ball. Giannis needs the ball. And so they don't have a lot of time to work that out, but you hope that the comfort that they had prior to Dame getting there, they can kind of just ease into Chris Middleton's on the court. He's healthy. They'll be okay.
And I think the added pressure seems to be on Milwaukee, because we're gauging everything against the Boston Celtics that have been so dominant during this regular season. And Zach, we know done largely with the same core. Obviously, Drew Holiday, a big add, especially defensively in that backcourt. And there's a couple of other things there, but we know narrative-wise, it's always going to be the concerns about the Celtics in the postseason and the boogeymen from the past. How real are those concerns given the actual structural differences of this team this year with guys like Drew and Kristaps and others?
They're still really there, and I think you saw that against the Cavs. Like, yeah, you can just say it's one game. Big teams lose games. Like, no one goes 82-0. No one goes 17-0 in football. Like, no one is a perfect team. But with the way the Celtics play at the end of games, I don't want to call it lazy. It's unimaginative. Like, they're trying to hit these hero shots and these step back jumpers, and everything looks like a highlight, and they don't move the ball as much, and they don't attack the basket, and they don't get to the free throw line in those moments. And so when they hit those shots, it's an incredible shooting team. Like, they have 8 guys in the rotation shooting 35% or better from three. Like, they put them up. Every other 3-pointer or every other shot is a 3-pointer on that team. They have the best offense in NBA history. They have one of the top 10 margins of victory in NBA history. They are as dominant dominant as the 2016-27 Warriors that added Kevin Durant to the mix. Like, all these things add up to this is an all-time great Celtics team. But for some reason, and I'm a part of this group, but like for some reason there is a large group of people. It's like, yeah, you got to do that in the playoffs. You got to do all this in the playoffs. Like, Joe Mazzulla has to coach better than what he did last year. You know, Jason Tatum has to hit clutch shots. Tom Haberstroh just had a great feature yesterday about clutch shooting with Jason Tatum, and it hasn't really been there for 3 years. Like, they just have all these things to answer, which is crazy for a team that is destroying everybody. But for some reason, people outside of Boston just can't buy in.
So staying in the East, you know, we're used to seeing Boston, Milwaukee, Miami, Philadelphia. Now in the 3-4-5 slot, you've got Cleveland, Orlando, and the Knicks. Of those three teams, which in your mind has the best chance to make an actual run in the playoffs?
The Knicks, if they're healthy, the problem is they're down 4 starters right now, right? In a game where you only start 5 people, they're down 4 of them. And so, you know, Jalen Brunson should hopefully be fine and be back soon. OG Anunoby should hopefully be fine. I don't know if they're getting Mitchell Robinson back. I don't know what this Julius Randle situation is with his shoulder and how bad it is. But when they're healthy, they have such a high IQ on the basketball court. Like, no one really makes dumb decisions time after time after time. And so I think the Knicks are built for it. You know, the Cavs were great last season, had the best defense in the NBA last season, and were awful in that first round against the Knicks. Again, they have the second or third best defense now. They look really good, even though they've dealt with injuries. You know, Donovan Mitchell's been in and out of the lineup. Evan Mobley's been hurt a bunch. Darius Garland was hurt for a while, and they still have won games, and you want to be impressed by them. But we all have that bad taste from last season that this team sucked in the playoffs. Like, they were so bad. They got absolutely abused by the Knicks, and you wonder, like, is that team just built for the regular season? You know, Donovan Mitchell's kind of living off that bubble hype of how he played against the Denver Nuggets. That was 4 years ago, right? Like that, like, he's got to show something in the playoffs. He's got to be better. I love this Orlando team. I think Joe Ingles is 100 years old, so he raises that age average in their rotation, but he's really the only old guy. Everyone else is super young. They play defense, which is really hard for a young team to do. They don't do a lot on offense that you love consistently, but Paolo Banchero is a stud. And Orlando, I don't think they're going to win a first round series, but I think they're that team that absolutely nobody wants to play.
I say I thank you for answering that, because I just had Orlando Magic with a bunch of question marks written down on my list of questions right now. Because outside of Paolo Banchero, I did not know how the hell they were doing this. And Zach, I'd love to stick there, but we do have a little bit of breaking news right now, courtesy of Shams Charania. The Minnesota Timberwolves all-star Karl Anthony Towns has been diagnosed with a torn meniscus in his left knee and is out indefinitely, sources tell The Athletic. So how much does this change the Western Conference picture now, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, the Wolves are one of those teams that had to, they had a lot to prove too, because they've got a ton of talent, but they've never exactly been great in the playoffs. And so this, in theory, could simplify things for them in terms of, like, this is a defensive-minded team, the best defense in the league. They struggle offensively. They struggle in late game situations, because I think they're trying to find that balance of, well, we got to get Cat the ball, we got to get Ant the ball, we got to make sure Mike Conley gets a shot. Jaden McDaniels is blossoming as a guy. Like, let's see if Rudy Gobert can catch this lob. You know, like, they've got a lot of questions in crunch time with scoring, but defensively, if anything, they'll be better defensively, because you can move Kyle Anderson into the rotation, and everything he does is in slow-mo. His nickname is literally slow-mo. It's odd to watch him play, but he's so smart. He's so good with the ball. He makes such great decisions. He's a great defender. I actually think their defense will get better. It's just, if teams load up and try to take the ball out of Ant's hands, I don't know where they go. Like, I genuinely don't know how that works. So Ant's just going to have to be the second coming of Michael Jordan, like everyone's hoping he will.
You know, the other side, you mentioned Orlando, outside of the one player, how young they are. Then you go to a team like the Clippers, where you have the 30s group of Paul George, James Harden, obviously Russell Westbrook, and Kawhi Leonard. Could they legitimately make this run? I still think Denver. I think we all think Denver is still the top team there. But where can this team go? And boy, what satisfaction that would be for James Harden.
Oh my God! I mean, James Harden would have the last laugh, right? Like, everyone's calling Daryl Morey a liar. It's not just him. Now Chris Paul's out here saying, like, yeah, he said I wasn't going to get traded, and then I got traded like that day. So it would be big vindication for the beard. But I mean, this team is. look, I feel like we've done this a lot the last 4 or 5 years with the Clippers. Like, yeah, this team should be able to win a title. They like that is deep. It's not just the stars like Zubats, Norm Powell, Terrence Mann. Like they've got a lot of great depth out there. Daniel Tice, Mason Plumlee. Like they have the size to at least throw big men at Jokic. They have the scoring to at least score with any team. They have defense. Like they have all this stuff. I believe in a healthy Kawhi Leonard more than any player in the league that isn't Steph Curry or Nikola Jokic. Like I think he's arguably the second best player when he's healthy. It's just we don't really see him healthy. He looks great this year. Everything's lining up to where they should make a deep run. And I don't think we'll get a better Western Conference Finals than if it's Nuggets and Clippers if everyone's healthy. It's the Clippers, man. Like you can't believe in them ever because they always find a way to disappoint people.
Speaking of disappointment, I want to talk about the Dallas Mavericks while we're talking about the West. What's going on here, and is Jason Kidd going to survive this season?
I think he will. Like, I think they like him enough as a coach, but the rotations are, they made some big moves at trade deadline. Like I know Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington aren't household names, but Daniel Gafford's like a really important rim runner, defensive player, guy protects the rim. He stretches the floor vertically, catches lobs, everything. I loved what they did at the deadline. I thought, all right, this Mavericks team is for real. Like they answered some issues that I thought they had with the roster. They dealt with injuries all first half of the season. Here they come. And it's just kind of deflating a little bit. Like Luka's still great. Luka's putting up crazy video game numbers, but when it comes to the rest of this team kind of fitting in, they just like they don't play any defense. Like I mean, it's stunning how bad defensively they are. The other night they played the Pacers, and I thought, oh, here's two teams that are great offensively, don't play any defense. This is going to be the All-Star game all over again, right? And they only gave up 137 points in a loss. It was actually kind of surprising it was that low. But yeah, man, like the Mavs, great offensively, two big stars, great role players, don't stay in front of anybody. It's like watching me at like they just play 3-point line to 3-point line at this point, which you can't do. Like I can do in a men's league, you can't do that. Under 40, you can't do that in the NBA.
Do we see anything in the future from the bromance of Luka and Jokic at the All-Star game down the road?
I mean, you never say never, but I know Jokic is not leaving Denver. It is the perfect level of anonymity, right? Like he like people care about him there. They care about the Nuggets, but they mostly care about the Broncos, right? Like that's Broncos country, and he can kind of fly under the radar. He doesn't have to do a whole lot of national stuff. People don't come in and out of there a whole lot. It's usually like real quick trips and everything. I don't think Luka's going to leave Dallas, but you never know. Like that's the way it would happen is Luka going there. I think both those guys are stuck there for life. Now that sounds naive in this day of sports transactions and stars leaving and leveraging and all that stuff. I think that's more of a fun what if down the road. And then we get to see them kind of bully each other at All-Star weekends and keep wondering what if.
You mentioned some of that, new age NBA stuff there. Some of that conversation popped up a little bit about Wemby the other day. I truly think it was more just, hey, maybe the Spurs have to reevaluate how quickly they need things to come together because he looks like he's a little bit ahead of schedule. What have you made of year one there? And do you think it prompts the Spurs to kind of adjust the timeline they may have had in mind for him?
I think they knew this was the case. Like, I think they knew he was this good. I think they knew that this is like they were going to be bad this year. I don't think it like they're on the clock. Like they only have 8.5 years to figure this out. Like there's no like worry there, right? Like they've got a couple of presidential terms before they have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I think what it does is maybe informs them on how they build the roster. They've tried some experiments with Jeremy Sohan, who's a power forward, essentially trying to play point guard. He can't really do it. Whenever they've had an actual point guard like Trey Jones on the court, they look great. Here's the crazy thing about Wemby. Like everything's insane. Like all the hype, he had historic hype and it was completely underselling how good he is. Like he is watching basketball in a funhouse mirror. Like none of it makes sense visually. None of it makes sense in terms of what he can do already. That team is awful defensively, like 24th, 25th in the league. When he's on the court, their defensive rating would be like 7th. That's how good he doesn't know what he's doing yet in terms of playing NBA basketball. Like they know that they have this guy that the crazy thing is like veterans will want to come play with him. Maybe not this summer, but by next summer, they're going to want to come to San Antonio and play with him. Like that really didn't even happen during the Tim Duncan era. That's how good he is. That's how dynamic he is. And everyone just knows like, oh, the league's screwed. Like this guy, when he figures out how to play NBA basketball as a veteran, there's nothing you can do except like maybe block the entrance.
Listen, he is fun to watch. I know he's got an ankle. He's dealing with now, but in a general sense, because we talked about this yesterday, and I should have prefaced it all by saying yesterday, I hope he stays with San Antonio. We've seen Popovich build a dynasty there, and I would love to see him stay there. It has nothing to do with big markets. I think it would be great. In general, though, when you get a great player like this, how long does a team have to build something before, as you mentioned before, in this day and age, players can leverage themselves out of things? How much time do you give a team?
Yeah, I mean, this stuff's kind of mutated over the last few years, right? Where it's there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of extremes that go along with players and player empowerment and stuff. But I mean, in general, you're always going to get that guy to sign a rookie deal, a rookie extension, right? So you're usually getting a 4 or 5 year rookie extension off that, 5 year for the super max or 5 year max for him. So like by like year 7, you really have to have your stuff together. Like it all in the rookie deal. It would be great if you could win, but this isn't like football, right? Where like, hey, we got this good rookie quarterback. We put all these veterans around him until we have to pay him. And there's that like kind of ticking clock. You don't really have that here. And so they just need to make sure that they are building forward every single year, not taking steps back unless there's injury. I think they're fine. Like, I don't think there's any real pressure. And I know that's not sexy at all, but I don't like, other than Kawhi Leonard getting mad at the team because they were disagreeing with his medicals and whether or not he could play, and Tony Parker coming out and saying some shady stuff as usual. Like that, other than that, they don't really have those dust-ups with ownership and players. I don't think Wemby's that guy.
I would agree on that. So probably going to be the status quo for them. Zach, only a couple minutes left here, but wanted to ask because I realized both of these teams in the East and West are in the 6th slot right now, and both have a mascot, there's a logo, I should say, that's a flaming basketball just going in opposite directions in the Heat and the Sun. So as these two teams sit in the 6th seed, which of these two actually has a better chance of being a factor in their side of the bracket's playoff structure?
I mean, look, it sounds crazy, but it's Miami because they do it every year. Like every year, people are like, the team's not that good. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be a great coach, but they're not that good. And then every year they frustrate you and they make you mad and they make you wonder, how the hell are they doing this? Is Jimmy Butler a superstar? What is Bam Adebayo doing? Tyler Hero snarling. Was that bad? Like, what are we doing here? Like they play the right way when it comes to stuff. I know people are sick of Heat culture. They're sick of the paragraph they put on the court. Like, all that stuff, I get it, but that team is every year ready for the playoffs. So as long as they are healthy, they're going to be incredible and probably make a deeper run than you expect. On the Sun side of it, it should work even with the roster complications of trying to build a super team in today's NBA with the collective bargaining agreement, all that boring stuff. Like, it's still Kevin Durant, it's Devin Booker, it's Bradley Beal, it's a couple of decent role players that, as long as they're healthy, they can make some noise. But it's the West. Like, the West has like 7 teams you could see going to the NBA Finals, and it's just they built this roster to do this, but it's a little harder to do it.
No, there's no doubt about that. A crowded field over there and the inevitability of Heat culture, much to the delight of all of our friends over at the Dan Le Batard Show, continues to be the most consistent brand in the NBA. Zach, you're the best, man. We appreciate you letting us lob every NBA question possible at you. Thanks for the time, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Oh, appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
Again, you guys can read Zach Harper over at The Athletic. You can listen to him on Sirius XM NBA Radio and Mad Dog Sports Radio as well, Dad.
You know, it proves a 61-year-old man can continue to learn as well. I thought the clock was quicker in the NBA, like it is in the NFL when you sign that big deal on when you have to restructure or when you're going to be released because of a cap hit. But to know that Wemby could have, up to 7 years for them to do something, I think that's great. I mean, it's great for San Antonio, given what they've done and what they can build there. So that's good news and something I did not know.
Yeah, there's those, but I think also what he mentioned there too is Wemby's just not that guy. I think personality matters a lot in the way that guys approach these situations. Hell, even the idea of Luka Doncic not being someone that would be inclined to pry his way out of that situation. And Luka seems much more, based on his dealing with officials, a little bit more emotional than our guy Wemby when it comes to some of these reactions.
Somebody, please, anybody, give Joey Votto a job because he is struggling out here. Former Reds first baseman has not found a home as a free agent after 17 seasons with the Reds at 40 years old. It's the first time he has ever been a free agent. And guys, he's not doing well with it, but he is doing well on social media because he's posting these videos and these pictures of him just looking absolutely distraught. You gotta feel for the guy.
Yeah, no, that's pain right there. That man is, he's like the fry cook outside of the restaurant that gets memed all the time, who's absolutely just going through it right there. But at least he got to clown on, another baseball team online. At least good for him on there. Get these tweets off.
Yeah.
I dig his, you think about it though, you've been playing a game that long, and all of a sudden you're a free agent and nobody wants you. And you know you're way closer to the end and probably at the end than you were at the beginning. That's got to be, we talk about that with athletes, but somebody this long, how mentally tough that has to be to be wanted for so long and then knowing the end is coming and then knowing the end is probably here and nobody to take a chance on you anymore.
No, it's a tough scene right there. I mean, the Expos did try.
Yeah.
Now he reminded them. He reminded them that they are not real and did so in French. Right. But you know what? At least the thought someone came to his aid there, even if it wasn't exactly forthright. So I don't know. Would like to see it. Like he's a great character for baseball. I think I remember. Yeah. All remember at the end of last year when we got the back and forth between him and Mad Dog. Like. We like characters in baseball, and I think the modern game is more receptive than that than ever, so somebody get Joey Votto.
I think he should just dive into MLB Network. Go do, he clearly has the personality.
True.
Just go do, talk radio, talk TV. I think TV, he's a good TV guy. He's good, he's animated. I think do that. Maybe throw some French in there.
I think he will. I mean, I definitely think he will get into it. I think he's a great personality for it, but I think he's one of those caught right at the end of wanting to still play and nobody wants you. To play. He's been with the Reds, from 2007 to 2023. That is a long time. And this is how unfortunately, most players come to the end of their career. They always say, when did you retire? And a lot of times, it's when did the league retire you? This was such a great player for Cincinnati and such a great personality. And now you find out, the phone's not ringing anymore. And it kind of forces you to say, okay, well, maybe it's time to hang him up. We'd all love to end our professional careers on our own agenda, and ride off into the sunset. But for the majority of players, that's not how it works. It works like this. You're waiting for a phone call and it doesn't come.
And it's tough when you have all these young players coming up and just making immediate impact on the league. Guys who have been around at one team for 17 seasons, you look and you're like, okay, maybe it is my time.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at Joey Votto right now, he's already got the tee. Like in this picture of him where it's if you're listening to this in the podcast, not watching on DraftKings Network or YouTube, sad Joey Votto is sitting on a park bench and he's already got the TV mullet. Like when we were all at home during the pandemic doing remote shots and you'd have to dress up. He's got like the V-neck with the suit jacket on the top, but then it's jeans and like hiking boots that my dad would wear on the bottom there. So just no real coordination to what he's going for here. That is a man who is either lost or, again to this point, ready for television because this outfit absolutely plays on television in this day and age. And has sensible footwear, which I know my dad would appreciate. He can absolutely go through a hike in the woods in those or get ready to step up on MLB Network.
I feel like he should switch out the shoes.
You do anything.
He looks a little homeless in that picture, but...
Well, I mean, that's also just like being a bald beard, like a bald-ish, I guess he's a buzz cut. He looks like there's still mostly full spots in that hairline, but...
It does. It looks like, being
a buzzed, bearded white guy,
there,
there's only so much we can all do to differentiate. We're basically the same person.
Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of someone who wants to dare to be different, though, we need to get to this George Brett story. This is incredible innovation along the home decoration landscape.
Yeah, Royals legend and Hall of Famer was in an interview to where he expressed the fact that he really, really, really wants one piece of Kauffman Stadium, but it's not a chair, it's not a piece of the grass, it's not a base, it's a urinal. Here's what he had to say.
And the thing about me, I grew up in locker rooms my whole life. And when I built this house, I have a urinal. In fact, we have 5 of them in this house. I'm going to exchange one, and I want to get a urinal out of Royal Stadium and put it in my house. That's the only thing I want. I don't want a seat. And I remember when they took down Yankee Stadium, a friend of mine was vice president of the Yankees back then, Arthur Richmond. And I called him, I said, Arthur, I'll pay for this. I want someone to go in there before they demolish that stadium and go get a urinal out of the Yankee Stadium locker room. The one that Babe Ruth went to the bathroom, and the one that Lou Gehrig, the one that Reggie. I want one of those in my house, and he couldn't get it for me. But how great would that be to have Babe Ruth's urinal in your house right now?
I can honestly say.
So I'm going to get one I'm going to get one if they demolish that stadium. I promise you, I'm going to go there in the middle of the night with the guy that built this house. And I'm going to say, come on, we got to figure out how to get one of these things out of here.
On this episode of My Strange Addiction,
Hey, listen.
urinals, 5?
Five urinals in the crib. I can't believe they're demolishing the stadium. You can't give this guy a urinal that's just going to go to hell in a handbasket?
I'm sure they will.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the Yankee Stadium one. This one, he's got options.
Right.
Like, I'd hire those kids that broke into the Clippers' new joint.
There you go.
And just have them go jack the urinal in there. You pay them off a little bit. They get clicks. You get a pisser, and everyone's good.
Yeah. Senior, did you have any strange requests when you retired, or?
This was, and actually, my wife, Mike's mother, wanted to do this at our house in Connecticut when we were at ESPN to put a urinal. Mike and Jake shared a room in our house there, and we wanted a urinal in there in the bathroom. We thought that had been so cool. So I'd have been all for that as well. Now, Mike, did you like the short urinal? You can't really get into this one, Claudia. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did you like the short urinal or the long urinal? All the way to the floor urinal or the one up?
Yeah, they both have their merit and virtue. I would probably say the long urinal, just like aesthetic-wise, is a lot cooler.
Well,
when it walks into the bathroom, it sends a message. See, the thing with me and urinals is I always feel like there's a stigma because in every men's bathroom, there's the line of urinals and then they got the little kid urinal in there. And there always seems to be this stigma when guys walk into the bathroom, if a lot of them are taken up, of being the adult that goes over. I got no shame in that. It doesn't change the way any of the process works. You aim down a little bit more. I don't understand what that's all about. Maybe I'm making it up, but it seems like over the years, people have looked down on the kiddie urinal.
I completely agree. I have no problem stopping at the kiddie urinal. And I would think I would go for the long urinal as well because, let's be honest, Mike, when you really have to go to the bathroom and you're hustling in there to go to the bathroom and you got a short urinal and you start going to the bathroom, there's a splash problem when you really got to go and it's coming out on the short urinal.
I have
you hit
to
the wrong
admit,
spot in that urinal, you get a little splash.
I didn't know there was different urinals, but I do have to admit when I was in Vegas for the Super Bowl, I just was not paying attention. And I walked into, I didn't realize until I was going to the bathroom and I saw a bunch of dudes' feet lined up outside. And I was like, oh no, I've done a bad
Oh no!
thing.
Oh, you were trapped
Wait,
in
you were
there
all the
already.
way in?
I was in the stall, but they were all using the urinal. It was the scariest moment.
Wait a minute.
I had to just
Claudia,
wait.
how did you go? How did you walk in, go into the stall, and not see the urinals on the wall?
I was in the zone, man. I was just in the zone.
When you gotta go.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
I will say, there are usually a couple of things, though, because we've all done that, right? Where you're on your phone, you're not paying attention, and you walk into the bathroom of the opposite gender. Now, for me, it's usually pretty easy, because guys, when you look up and don't see a urinal, you're a little bit freaked out.
Right.
But women's bathrooms in general, I feel like it's Narnia in there. I've heard from my female friends, you got couches in there. Anytime... A women's restroom at a bar sounds like the most supportive, kind environment on planet Earth. The way my friends and sister have described it, it truly sounds like society is a utopia, exists in women's bathroom at bars.
You meet your best friends. If you're feeling ugly or whatever, go into the bathroom, random stranger, girl, you look so good. Thank you.
It is. It's just so beautiful. And you have couches and stuff in there, it sounds like. It's incredible.
The women's restroom always has the line, though. You never see a guy having to go into a women's restroom to go to the bathroom because of the line, but you see girls sometimes going to the guys. If there's too long a line, their boyfriend will try and bring them in so they can go to the bathroom.
Or you just go into the men's room and pretend like you didn't know.
There you go.
Which I've done.
No. I didn't see this. Darn it. My bad, fellas. We'll get it together next time. Yes, absolutely, George Brett. Get me the at-home pisser. And folks at the Royals, if you don't give this man a urinal when it's all said and done, shame on you. Treat your legends the right way. Let them pee in peace.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, and we're going to discuss a new pod that came out on New Heights with the Kelce brothers, and the fact that, well, it wasn't that surprising, but things got a little bit emotional while Travis talked about his brother and his retirement. Take a listen.
We did not talk about much of your retirement, and I wanted to make sure that you didn't feel any pressure from me to keep going, knowing I wanted you to keep going. I wanted you to keep playing this game.
Why didn't you tell me this? I would have changed my mind.
No. You've always been a step ahead of me in
I'm older, Trey.
in this game. Yeah, but it's in this game alone. You've always been a step ahead of me, and it's always been like I've had that flotation device right there. To have you out of it, man, it feels empty, and it definitely it feels like it's complete, you know? Mm-hmm. It was a success.
I hear you.
It was a fun journey to watch, and like I said yesterday, man, I just appreciate you showing me the way and bringing us all along the journey with you, big guy.
We showed each other the way. You've been playing for a long time on your own, and I look forward to being able to appreciate and watch your games more and take in the bigger picture of football and everything that it has to offer.
Well, it was just it was cool being the tag team
hey!
of the National Football League. Pretty cool.
Interesting to see Travis the one more emotional, too.
Oh, I was going to say, Jason doesn't have any tears left.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we saw as a man who had finally drained all the tears in his ducts and had nothing left. And you could see him trying to veer it away at that point a little bit, where he was trying to push away with, like, the jokes while I'm older, Trav. Yeah. That man was finally done with crying, but Travis was out here to get this love off, and I respect it from both parties involved, Dad.
Listen, it's a great story. I mean, a great story going all the way back to college of basically Jason saving Travis's career after he got kicked off the team at Cincinnati, of getting him talking to the coaches and getting him back on the team and basically saying, I'll be responsible for him to fly right so he stays on this team. And these are going to be all the way to a 6th round pick for Jason, I think a 3rd round pick for Travis, all the way to the Hall of Fame. I mean, and two just different guys, but just really good guys. And the hottest pair out there right now, right? That podcast, that's going to be sold somewhere. I mean, they're going to be huge there. Jason is going to basically have his pick of broadcasting, if that's what he wants to do, which I would imagine he's going to do, of what he wants to do. But you know me, Mike, I love the journey of players. We all know what Jason is. We all know what Travis is now. The guys are going to have gold jackets on. But their journey, and as Jason mentioned in his retirement speech, they're a small family with aunts, uncles, and just, you know, he and Travis's brothers. And how they've stuck together and how they've been together and how they've played together and how they've hung out together is just a cool story. And I think one of the coolest things about it is they both didn't go in as, not that there's anything wrong with being a high 1st round pick. I'd wish that on anybody, but they didn't have all the fanfare coming into the NFL. They both worked their asses off to get where they got. And Jason was such an instrumental part in Travis getting to where he got. And then Travis obviously blossomed into what he is right now as well.
Yeah, successful NFL brothers hot in these streets right now. We've seen them over the years in different forms. Obviously, you had the Mannings that, played, the same position, but across different times. One certainly more successful than the other, although Eli Manning will have his Hall of Fame case there. We've also now got NFL coaching brothers back again, and the Harbaughs now who are back in the brother content game too, Claudia.
Yeah, Jim and John also going viral with their videos. The Chargers posted a video of their new head coach with his brother talking about the Harbaugh-isms. Take a listen.
Dad was taking us to school, and we walk out, and we're like, where's the car, Dad? And he goes, no car today, boys. We're walking. Grab a basketball. Let's get 100 with the right, 100 with the left. Who's got it better than us? And we're like, nobody. Nobody, Dad. But that's what he would say. He would like drop us off at school. First time I heard it was, okay, boys, grab your lunch boxes and go attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And don't take any wooden nickels. Okay, get going. And out the door we go. And that became like a daily thing when he was dropping us off at school.
I mean, to me, like, what is an enthusiasm unknown to mankind? Like, I don't know if we ever really thought about it too much, but you start thinking about it. It's unknown to mankind. Mm-hmm. It's not a human thing. It's beyond that. It's another realm. It's a spiritual thing we can tap into, right?
It is spiritual.
It's so funny seeing how alike Jim and his dad are, and clearly like John sitting here like, you guys sound insane.
You guys are crazy.
You guys sound a little bit insane right now. But
do you guys have Golic-isms?
Well,
there has to be a few.
I was gonna say, I feel like my dad was so clearly his father's son, like all of the things that my grandpa passed down to my dad in terms of like football and the way you went about doing the work, all that stuff. Like we were in the 7th grade and my dad, I think because of a deal they had with Mike and Mike, had like one of those H2 Hummers at that point. And we were in the 6th and 7th grade and my dad was taking us over to the middle school parking lot to go push the Hummer back and forth across that and do drills in the open field. He had my mom holding the bag, for Christ's sake, out in the field there to help us get ready and doing drills. I once laid out my mom at the field because she wasn't holding the bag sturdy enough. Didn't have enough of her weight behind her there. And so she got absolutely dropped when I climbed to the 2nd level. That's when we knew I was D1 bound. But no, Dad had plenty of that in his bag. He was peak sports dad that way.
Yeah, and a lot of it was from my dad and what he did with me and my brother Greg and my brother Bob as far as, okay, if you choose to play in this sport, I'm going to help you as much as I can. You got to do the work, but I'm going to, provide the tools for it. So you guys pushed the Hummer well. I mean, you did a good job with that. I think it helped. I still can't believe you hit your mother the way you did with that bag. I just told you to get to the 2nd level. I didn't tell you to knock her down. I didn't tell you to
strike and
destroy
deliver
her. But you did, and she went ass over tea kettle on that one. Other than that, Claudia, there's not really the Golic-isms, but this is how bad it is for me now. It's the dadisms. It's the lines that they know I'm going to say. It's so bad that we're out here in Arizona now, and my daughter Sydney and her husband Ben are out here with us. So we would go out to dinner quite a bit. And it turns out at one point, Sydney and Ben, before they leave for dinner, they make a dadisms bingo card. They actually make a bingo card with things that I say, and they wait for me to say them at dinner. Like when the plate's empty and the waiter comes over, can I take the plate or look at the plate? And I say, oh, it wasn't very good, with an empty plate. That's that's on the bingo card. They start rattling off things that I say. So I kind of get stuck with that stigma a little bit.
Is that going to carry on to you? And when did the dadisms come?
Oh yeah, I mean we've already all noticed the same stuff that he's brought out there. Like I would say the most football guy thing my dad always consistently said, and it was the same thing his dad said, was, oh, you can't bring the bench out to the 50-yard line. And I was always like, especially later on, it's like, well, it does kind of help being strong out there, and there are certain parts of it that do translate. But between that, between everywhere you would go and every time you would do something new, do your best, be yourself, walking out the door, you'd always get there. But the bench out on the 50-yard line one always felt like the biggest like sports dadism that we would get from him.
Yeah, that was probably it. And again, that came from, Grandpa Lou, without question. That's how he was. And yeah, I was pretty basic. People are always like, what do you tell you? And I tell kids, and I'm always, be yourself is always the big one to me. Like when I started this media thing, that's what my dad said. He said, just be yourself. People either like you or they won't. That's just the way it goes. Nothing earth shattering, not breaking the barriers of sound bites of things you tell your kids. It was all pretty basic. I'm a pretty basic guy. I think everybody would admit that.
My dad's biggest fascination is in life, and the thing I was most like my dad when I was a homeowner was my dad is obsessed with clean air in the home. No one is more in tune with changing their home's air filters than my father. I said it should be a service that he offers to other people to go and do it. He did it for one Rebecca Lobo and her husband. But by the end of my time when I was living in Connecticut, I was a homeowner for like 6 years, and I would have the alarm set for every quarter to go and change my home's air filter to make sure, because the last thing you want is to be you or anyone else in your home breathing in dangerous spores. So that is probably the most dad-like that I became over the course of my life. I haven't had the chance to tell anybody they can't take the bench out to the 50-yard line yet, Dad.
Yeah, when I retire from this media business, I am going to start a filter changing service. I think it needs to be done because nobody likes breathing in airborne spores.
Nobody likes breathing in airborne spores, but we love celebrity boxing matchups. Coming up next, the latest announcement from the fight game on the thing that we'll all certainly regretfully watch. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday wherever you get the DraftKings network. You can also hear the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern each and every day wherever you get VSiN on the radio. And if you miss any of it live, and our great guests, thanks to Zach Harper from The Athletic and SiriusXM NBA Radio for stopping by to help get us caught up on some of the NBA action in the home stretch of the season. You can get that wherever you get your podcast. You can also get it available right here on the YouTube channel as soon as we get done with this show at 10 a.m. Eastern. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And a little bit of breaking news this morning. Saw courtesy of our buddy Ariel Awani. The deal is done. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, July 20th, exclusively on Netflix, live at Cowboys Stadium. I mean, this is every promotional buzzword imaginable wrapped into one thing designed to just grab eyeballs. Dad, like most of these fights, I don't fully understand it. It makes me a little sad because Mike Tyson's 57 years old. He's been on quite a journey in his life, both personally, professionally, and otherwise since then. And Jake Paul's a person with a lot of conflicting feelings and emotions attached to him, but a ton of money in his wake. And I have no doubt, Dad, that this is going to make a ton of money because we're all going to watch with morbid curiosity.
Oh, absolutely going to watch. Now, I have Netflix, so we get that. But even if I didn't, I would buy this without question. There's a 30-year age difference, 57 to 27. And I think it was in Jake Paul's second professional fight. He was on the undercard of Mike Tyson back in 2020. And Tyson's fought. I forgot who he fought. It was Roy Jones Jr., I think he fought. Listen, this is going to be a monster payday. I completely get that. I'm not sure what the win is, in all honesty, for Jake Paul. Now, I think everybody started out kind of wanting Jake Paul to get his kind of face beat in for all the yapping that he was doing, but dude has turned out to be a hell of a boxer. I mean, he has worked his butt off. He has put his time in. I don't know where he fits in the rank of all the, of boxing if he were just in the boxing world, because he may go to MMA as well. I don't know, but the dude has worked and the dude can box. So I'm not sure what you get out of if you are to beat a 57-year-old in Mike Tyson, though I'll say this on the other side. If you all haven't seen Mike Tyson training now, Google it. Because this 57-year-old man, I would say if you put them up on one of those, in the arcades, the punching bag machine, I would still say Mike Tyson punching that bag will hit it harder than Jake Paul will. Mm-hmm. If Mike Tyson lands one of those 6 to 8 inch punches that he's known for, Jake Paul may not wake up for a week. So I'm not sure what the win is for Jake Paul. If he loses to a 57-year-old man. If he wins, hey, great, you beat a guy that's 30 years older than you. So outside of this would be great marketing and great money, I'm not sure what the win is for Jake Paul.
Well, that's the issue. He's 9-1, but everybody's saying you're picking your fights against washed-up guys. So what does that really say? And I get it. It's true. But as we all know, the Paul brothers usually just do things for money, and that's what this is. So, I mean, Tyson agreed to it. So clearly he's ready to head into it. And
it's a cash grab.
Love to see him win it.
Oh, my God. I hope so. Like, Mike Tyson, to me, represents one of the most legitimately feared boxers of all time. Yes. Seeing the interviews where he's in tears talking about the person he used to be as a fighter and not wanting that guy to come out anymore and how afraid he seems of his former self should be terrifying enough for most people going into this. I get he's 57, saying the time, all that stuff. But like Dad said, I think the reason we're all going to watch is because everyone wants to see if Tyson can connect on one and knock this guy's soul out of his body, because that's what he's always been capable of. I used to sit in my hotel the night before games and watch the Mike Tyson, it was on ESPN Classic. They would put Mike Tyson's career knockout reel on there. You want to get hyped for a football game. Just watch Tyson miss uppercuts in shots that would have Pez dispensered somebody's head. Collect $200, pass go, all that stuff. So we're going to do this. We're all going to watch this. We know how this works. The Paul brothers have had a unique economy on eyeballs for a while, and that seems like it's going to continue here. Claudia, let's get to that and a little bit of NFL news as more and more roster decisions get made heading down the stretch here. The Denver Broncos and their all-pro safety Justin Simmons now parting ways.
Yep. That just came out about like 30 minutes ago. So as the news carries in with free agency coming up here, I think we have a tweet on the board here. Broncos releasing all-pro safety Justin Simmons in a move, again, to clear salary cap space, as we've been talking about all day. $18.25 million against the cap. Now that is free. Curious to see what they do now. Of course, the Broncos, as we talked about earlier, lots of things they need to do in order to clean up this roster, guys.
Yeah, this is one, though, I think surprising to a lot of people, just given the level that he had played at here, Dad. This Broncos secondary and some of the young parts involved in this had certainly been much improved at the end of last season, I think, the defense overall. So in a year now where we're talking about, I think, so much added focus, Dad, on the spine of the defense, defensive tackle, linebacker, the safety level, and how important that is in the modern NFL with the amount of two safety defenses people are playing, with the advent of these Shanahan-McVay offenses that are exploiting the middle of the field, I'm sure a guy like this is going to be pretty coveted.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I mean, I know he's 31. He's been up there a bit. But I mean, all pro 4 times, Pro Bowler twice in his 8 seasons there. This guy's a ball player. I mean, in 22 led the league with 6 interceptions, 23 had 8 passes defense, couple of forced fumbles, a sack, 3 picks. This one, every now and then you're going to get surprising ones, right? And he had 1 more year left on his contract. And he becomes a cap casualty. Now, will they try and sign him back? I have no idea. I'm sure other teams will be interested. And we always say to players, don't take things personal. But, you know, he may say, okay, you're releasing me. I'm going to look to move on somewhere else. This is one of those that kind of surprises you a little bit, but it also shows where teams are in their building or rebuilding as opposed to where their cap space is.
Yeah, going to be fascinating. I mean, we talked about Buffalo just clearing out a lot of their defensive back room now, having a need at safety. We saw the Eagles and all of the injuries that they had last year at that position, releasing Kevin Byard, I believe, earlier this offseason. So their safety room has got plenty of openings in it. The Baltimore Ravens probably going to lose Geno Stone. So on and on down the list, there are plenty of teams and contenders potentially that could need help in the safety room, and now get a guy that's instantly going to get jumped to near the top of a lot of the free agents lists as we go into a pretty robust offseason, again, down the spine of a lot of these teams. All right, let's get to the third here. Scorpion bite, although I guess it's more of a sting in Las Vegas, hitting one man really where it hurts.
Yeah, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, except for this dude who's trying to make some money off of something that is absolutely bizarre. He was sleeping in the Venetian, a hotel in Vegas, and he woke up to a scorpion biting him where the sun don't shine. The hotel said, sorry, bud, we're not going to comp your room. You're just going to have to deal with it. This is basically like the worst fear of anybody, right? I'm not a dude, but I can imagine that hurts.
So I would say worst fear for me is still snake coming up out of the toilet while I'm down doing work there. I think that's the one that keeps me up at night. Spiders are pretty bad, but Dad, as someone who lives in Arizona most of the year now, and we grew up in Arizona a lot, this idea of scorpions infiltrating your most delicate places is something that you've lived pretty personally. We've all kind of seen firsthand.
Yeah, listen, this is what a scary, especially when you're sleeping, and all of a sudden you get that sting down there. You're wondering what the hell's going on. He did slip off his briefs and his underwear, and he took a picture of it dangling from his underwear. But I mean, listen, wow, getting stung in the couillons, man. I mean, that I just can't even fathom that. And yeah, they're out here. Your sister's dogs, both Dorothy and Earl, the couple of bulldogs, have both had their, a couple of times gotten stung by scorpions. It's a real thing out here for sure, but nobody expects to get stung there. I get stung on the hand or the foot or something, okay. But yeah, getting stung there, man, that is a tough,
I wonder if this is like a
go.
We Are the Millers situation where it's like the size of a softball and all of a sudden you really have some
Yeah.
Like, how freaked out could the guy have been if he's got time to take the picture? I guess that's my whole point is if you're going to try and come after these people, I'd imagine you got to be in a little more distress than the guy who's able to get it off for the gram, or maybe that's just the time we live in.
How do you not comp his room, give him a free meal, something? They didn't do anything for the guy.
They comp rooms for nothing out there in Vegas.
Nothing.
Yes.
You could get murdered in your hotel room. They're like, sorry, man, it's Vegas.
Hey, listen.
Not our fault.
That's showbiz, baby. No stings below the waist down here. Just quality podcasting. If you agree, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.